Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Sunday, March 3rd. And this behind the scenes video is brought to you courtesy of my laptop because my laptop is giving me a lot of trouble lately. And the biggest problem I'm having now is that the whole screen, but mainly the lower half of the screen is sort of wearing out. And I was doing some video editing this morning, and then the bottom half of the screen just went black, and I just couldn't do anything anymore. So as far as I can tell, the only way to deal with it right now is to turn it off, set it aside for a while, and then let it recover, and then I can use it again for a little while. I thought it had something to do with the laptop overheating, so I've been trying to be very careful to keep it cooler and not let it overheat. And as part of that process, I've started uploading videos from my phone again. Not editing on my phone, but I've been editing on the laptop, and then after I export the video, rather than uploading from the laptop, now I copy the video to one of my phones, and then I leave my phone running all night to do the upload. And I probably should have been doing that right from the beginning, because I think leaving the laptop on and running all night uploading videos might have something to do with wearing it out. So it would have been better to just use one of my phones for uploading. It's just a little bit of a problem because it just adds more time. Now you're copying these massive video files from the laptop to a flash drive, then from the flash drive to my phone, and then it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but when you add up all of these periods of time where you're just copying files, exporting files, uploading files, and waiting for it. Oh, I just said, waiting for something to finish, hours go by before you realize it. But anyway, right now I have a video uploading on this phone, and there's a problem with that. I have this problem on my pet peeves section, but since I'm talking about it now, I'll bring it up right now, that I'm uploading from my phone using the YouTube Studio app. But there's a problem with that because you don't get any progress indicators. This is another big annoyance with YouTube, where they miss out on a lot of these little details. They appear to have big engineering teams working on features, and yet they often overlook, I guess they're small things, but they're much more important to me. So in this case, I am uploading a video, but there's no progress bar. There's no percentage reading. So it doesn't say, 10% uploaded now after an hour, 15%. There's no indication that any progress is being made. And even what it does tell me isn't accurate, because normally if you upload a video to YouTube, you get a progress indicator. You see a percentage, 7%, 8%, 20%, to 100%. And then when the video finishes uploading, the message changes to processing. YouTube is now processing your video. It has to process all the different resolutions, standard definition, 4K, whatever it is. It has to go through all of these steps and process your video, and of course lowering the quality considerably as it does so. And then when it's done processing, then it says YouTube is now checking your video, and it's checking it for content that is not advertiser friendly, for copyright violations, anything like that. So you get uploading, then processing, then checking. But here on the Studio app, as soon as you hit upload, it says processing will begin shortly. And that's all it says. And then there's no progress bar. So for all I know, my phone is frozen. For all I know, the uploading isn't even happening. And I could have my phone sitting here for 10 hours waiting for it to finish. And I don't know whether it's still at 0% or it could be at 95%. I have no idea. So that's another problem with YouTube, something that I wish they would fix. And that problem kind of touches on an overall theme of modern digital life, which I find, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not annoying, it's troubling. So far, it hasn't really affected me, but I can see it being a very big problem for anyone who makes YouTube videos, a YouTuber, because assuming everything is working, then there's no problem. You make the video, you upload the video, you reply to comments, everything is smooth. But let's imagine there's a problem. A hacker takes over your YouTube channel, something goes wrong, you get a strike from YouTube and they shut down your channel. Let's imagine something like that happens, or any number of terrible things could happen to your YouTube account or your Google account, and then what do you do? Imagine it happens to me right now. Who are you going to call? I would have no idea. Like, YouTube for me is this faceless entity that exists somewhere in the cloud, on the internet. I don't know where it is. I don't know who they are. I don't have any personal contact with that company in any way. And it always seems to me that I live in dread of something going wrong, because if something does go wrong, I would be helpless. I would have no clue how to address the problem. And I was thinking about that because one of the reactor channels that I watch is currently having a problem. And she's a relatively big YouTuber. Compared to me, she's extremely big. She reacts to movies and TV shows. The channel is called Popcorn in Bed, and it's a Canadian woman living in the United States now, but she sits on a sofa or sits in a bed, because it's called Popcorn in Bed, and then she watches a movie and reacts to the movie, and I believe her husband does the editing, and her channel took off. There are a lot of reaction channels on YouTube. A lot of people try to do it and they just don't become popular, but her channel, for whatever reason, her style, her personality, something about her made her channel popular, so it's been growing, and she and her husband have been investing in the channel a lot, and she's becoming a bit of a celebrity. And I just noticed this morning she is on YouTube and posting these big, long rants about trouble she's facing. And she says in the rant, like, she's apologizing to her audience, saying, I apologize for subjecting you to this rant, but I don't know what else to do. I have this problem with YouTube and Google, and now what? I'm trying to contact YouTube, I'm trying to contact Google, but everything is automated. I'm only dealing with computers and this and that, and I can't seem to track down any resource, any human being, any system to fix this problem that I'm having. And in her case, the problem is Google shut down her Google Drive, her online storage. She was using Google Drive to store all of her administrative files, all of her notes, all kinds of things related to her YouTube channel, and somehow or other, something in her Google Drive set off a red flag, and then in Google systems just closed her Google Drive, just shut it down. And now she's stuck, has no more access to any of her documents, and she can't seem to find a way to contact anyone to fix the problem. And yeah, it's a troubling thing. And a lot of people, I think, are in that situation, maybe not even in social media, but in life in general, where government services, tax and water bills and electricity, all these things are controlled by computers now. And if there is a problem, I think people in general are faced with a situation where there's nobody that they can call, and the situation is very difficult to resolve. And I think a lot of us are in that position these days. Kind of scary. A couple of current affairs stories are on my mind, and the main one is a changing situation in the Darien Gap. And the Darien Gap, of course, is that section of jungle between Colombia and Panama where there are no roads of any kind, and that has become a major pathway for illegal migrants heading from South America up into Mexico and then trying to cross the border into the US. And as I've talked about in previous videos, this migrant flow has been growing to the extent that I think last year 500,000 people hiked down that trail through the Darien Gap, 500,000 every year, and it's been growing. And of course, immigration, illegal immigration, migrants is a big issue in the United States right now, and it's becoming a big hot button issue for the upcoming election. And because of that, there's a lot more focus on that. And I just saw all these articles saying that in Colombia, the military or the police have arrested a bunch of boat captains because they were ferrying illegal migrants from the town of Necoclí to the jumping off point where they begin the trek through the Darien Gap. And I watched a ton of videos about this, and I thought it was so fascinating that everybody knows these are illegal migrants. For the most part, they don't seem to have any proper visas or paperwork. A lot of them don't even have a valid visa, valid passport. Their passports have expired. If they're from Venezuela and the government services aren't operational, they can't get their passport renewed. So they're all even inside Colombia illegally. Everybody's aware of it, and everybody knows they're getting on these boats, and then they're going to be hiking illegally to enter Panama, and then illegally through all the other countries to eventually illegally enter the United States. It's all out in the open, and yet there are systems in place, even government systems, that were just helping them on their journey. And I found that interesting, that something so in a gray area in terms of its legality is actually just happening out in the open. And it seems like it would be such an easy thing to shut down, where you have all this political pressure in the United States against migrants. How hard is it to block this flow of people? It would be very easy to do, I thought. And in this case, who knows what happened behind the scenes. Coming from the United States because of the elections, there was pressure put on Colombia. So at least for now, let's stop this. And then all they had to do in Colombia was arrest a couple of boat captains. These are the boats that are ferrying people to the Darien Gap, and they pulled over a couple of those boats, charged the captains with human trafficking, I guess, that they are ferrying illegal migrants through the country. And now that entire system of boats that were going back, dozens of boats a day, taking all these illegal migrants, shut down. They just stopped it overnight. One decision: no more boats, arrest the captains, and the entire migrant flow has been shut off. It was that easy to do. But when you read through the articles, of course, it creates problems, because there was a flow of people coming from all over the world into South America, because these are not just South Americans. People from China are now a big part of this, because the people from China can't get into Mexico, they can't get into the United States, but they'll find a country in South America where they can land and get an entry visa or visa on arrival easily. And then once they're physically in South America, no matter which country, then they can start physically traveling overland and go across borders illegally if they need to. So it's people from China, people from all over the world, and you've got this flow of people, and they all get to a place like Necoclí in Colombia, with the assumption that they're going to spend 1-2 nights there, and then they'll be on a boat continuing. But now that the boats are shut down, all the people that were in Neklokli and all the people behind them that were kept arriving day after day, they can't move forward. So now you've got this log jam of thousands of people stuck in Neklokli. They can't move forward, they can't go backwards, and they don't have enough money to just be there. So it's creating a little bit of a humanitarian crisis in that town. So yeah, I found that story kind of interesting, and I'll probably follow it over the next few weeks and months, see how it plays out. Normally what happens in these situations is once one pathway for the migrants is closed, well, they just find another pathway. So either the Darien Gap will eventually be opened up again, or all the people who were intending to go through the Darien Gap are just going to have to find another way. Boats going all the way around the gap, somehow flying into Central America, flying into Mexico, if they can figure out a way to do that. Now, who knows? And the other story that I noticed this morning, the headline is Bali Tourism Tax generates $1 million despite payment problems. So the brand new tourism tax in Bali, 150,000 rupiah per person, $10 US basically, has been in place for 2 weeks. So the last 2 weeks of February were the first 2 weeks where they were charging tourists this $10 per person tax. And in that time, they've already earned $1 million through the tax. So from that point of view, from Indonesia's point of view, the program is a big success. But I was reading through the article and a bunch of other articles giving information about this tourist tax, and I have a lot of thoughts about it, most of them negative, because as I've talked about already, I dislike this trend all over the world where tourism is being controlled more and more and more. More taxes, shorter visas, more expensive visas. Everything is getting so organized and limited. And this is just another step in the process. So when you pay your $10 tourism tax to get into Bali, at least it's a one-time charge, which is good. That in Bali, you pay it when you arrive and now you're done, as opposed to here in Malaysia where you essentially pay $3 every single day. Every day you're here, you have to pay another 10 ringgit daily, every single day. So it becomes an ongoing hassle. At least here, you get it over with all at once, and you only pay one time, and it's a lot cheaper. However, in Bali, now they have to confirm that you've paid it. So it's not just you enter the country and you have to pay at the airport, and once you get out of the airport, you're free. It doesn't work that way, because you can, if you wish, also pay at your hotel or at other places. Because apparently at the airport, they just don't have enough scanners. They don't have enough administrative firepower yet to handle the thousands of people every day. So people are paying later on when they get to their hotel somehow. There's a mechanism in place for doing that. So now, when you're a tourist wandering around Bali, they now have to keep checking to make sure that you paid. So even though you only had to pay once and you paid at the airport, they give you a voucher, and you have to carry this voucher around with you for your entire time in Bali. And I've seen articles where tourist attractions now, when a foreigner shows up and pays their entrance fee to go into the tourist attraction, now they ask to see their tourism tax voucher. Like, oh, have you paid the tax yet? And they have to produce their voucher to show that they paid. And now they have tourism police, and their job is to spot check. So they wander around Bali, and when they see a foreigner, an obvious tourist, they'll go up to them and just stop them on the street and demand that they produce their voucher to show that they paid their tourism tax. And now hotels are going to ask people when they're checking into the hotel, we need your passport, we need this, we need that. Oh, I need to see your voucher, your tourism tax voucher, make sure you paid. Okay, everything's good. One more hassle. And what I really don't like about that is this idea of the police, the tourism police, having the power to stop anyone at any time and demand to see their tourism tax voucher. It's just another annoyance out there in the world, and I don't like that at all. A funny thing is that in these articles they talk about how the tourism police, in order to soften the blow, they're now bringing puppies with them. So when they go out onto the streets, they have these special tourism police spot checkers, but they have a cute dog. So when they go up to a foreigner, at least something nice is happening. The foreigner can pet the dog and they take pictures together. Oh, the puppy is so cute. So the police are wandering around with puppies while they're checking to make sure that tourists have paid. And it's interesting as well, related to all these articles are the other restrictions where, for example, there's a holy mountain called Mount Agung, and there was an article about how Mount Agung is closed to tourists for a certain month. I guess it's a very popular mountain for foreigners to climb. And now they're saying, no, you can't climb it during this month because we have special ceremonies we need to perform, part of the local Balinese culture. And you see that all over Bali where there's this pressure. There was a argument being made in the government that all of the mountains, all of the hills in Bali would be off limits to foreigners because these are all sacred sites to the Balinese people. And then there have been, of course, well-publicized cases where drunk tourists behaved badly on these mountains, especially with social media, going to the top of these mountains and doing something bizarre or strange and taking video of themselves or taking photos of themselves, getting drunk, doing nude yoga poses, all kinds of unusual things. And these are all offensive to the local people. So there is this idea in Bali that they're putting in place all these restrictions and taxes and tourism police to control the behavior of foreigners because foreigners are known to be behaving quite badly in Bali. It's a huge tourism destination. People go there to have fun. A lot of young people go there, and of course there is a lot of drinking. A lot of people get drunk and they do things that offend the local people, and now tourist police and restrictions and laws, and this is happening. But in the article as well, all these articles, I noticed this language about how these laws and restrictions and the tourism tax, the purpose of it is to preserve and protect the local culture. And I find that language troubling as well. In my experience, as soon as a country or a region starts talking about the need to preserve their culture or protect their own culture, they've already lost. You can't put culture in a time machine and stop it. Culture is an ongoing process. You cannot control culture. So it's weird to talk about preserving the culture and using a tourism tax to do it, because in the articles they say the money will be used to support, forget the name, they had a name for them. These are these villages that foreigners can visit to experience local culture. But of course, these are just tourist attractions. They're not real. They're not actual vibrant living communities anymore. The local people there dress up in their traditional clothes, perform traditional dances and the traditional Balinese puppet shows, perform the music, and they do all this for the visitors who come in every day and pay money to see this. So it's weird that this is their idea of preserving the culture, which is essentially creating a fake tourist village, if you see what I mean. I just found what they called it. They call these places tourism villages. So the tourism tax is going to be used to support tourism villages. But of course, to my mind, those villages are fake and artificial. It's like a snapshot of some fantasy of what Bali used to be like before tourism. So modern day Bali, modern culture there is a tourism culture. Like it or not, that is the new Bali. It has been turned into a tourism destination on an extreme level. If you want to experience Indonesia in its natural state, well, that's easy to do. It's a huge country, thousands of islands, millions of people. Just go off somewhere and go to any local town. That's modern culture. Those tourism villages are like museums in a way. They're like amusement parks, cultural amusement parks, and somehow thinking that you can spend money and preserve your culture that way. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I really don't like this idea of this tourism tax where you individually have to figure out how to pay the tax, get a receipt in the form of a voucher, whether that's a piece of paper or a document with a QR code, and then you have to present this document the entire time that you're there. I don't like any of this at all. Here in Malaysia, it's annoying enough that you have to pay the tourism tax when you check into the hotel. Can you imagine having to do that in Malaysia? You pay the tourism tax, and now every time you go outside, you're looking around for the tourism police because they can come up to you at any time and demand to see your tourism tax receipt from the hotel to make sure that you paid the tourism tax. Seems to me that in the past, all of these fees and taxes were kept hidden from us. I suppose in a way it's better that it's out in the open. You're aware of it, but it feels like it would be a lot more efficient to do what they've done with all the other fees we don't know about. They just fold it into, say, your airfare ticket. That when you fly into Bali, once you book your airline ticket, the cost of your ticket, you're paying for the airport maintenance fee, the exit tax, the entrance tax, and now the tourism tax. They fold so many fees in there that are hidden. You don't see it. You just pay for the flight and it has all these fees. It would be better for Indonesia to somehow put this tourism tax into that. Some sort of an automated system included in the visa. Everybody has to, well, not everybody, but yeah, how do you do it? Basically, just don't do it. It's one more annoying thing because you have to visit the website and or download the app. In the article, they say the app is called Love Bali, which is kind of disingenuous, but they're trying to make it seem a better thing than it is. It's the Love Bali app. So you have to download the app, install it, open an account, probably username, password, all of that, enter all your details, and then you have to figure out how to submit a payment through that app and then get your voucher, your QR code that you paid. Another app is what I'm saying. How many apps now do we need to download before we go to another country? It's becoming an incredibly complicated process to go to a new country with SIM cards, on and on and on. There's convenience in it all, of course, the modern world, digital, being able to go to an ATM anywhere in the world and withdraw money from your home bank account, though you have to pay for that privilege, of course, all the hidden fees you end up paying. But I guess that is a convenience. But man, this avalanche of technology, they're just adding more and more and more. And they do say also in these articles that the tourism fee will be used to build tourist infrastructure. First of all, I don't believe it. I'm cynical enough these days that I'm fairly certain that all this millions of dollars they're going to be collecting, who knows? Will it be siphoned off by all the corrupt politicians? It's just a big pool of money that nobody knows what it's for. Nobody knows what to do with it. And you just know a lot of it is just going to disappear. And a lot of government officials are suddenly going to have a lot more money in their bank accounts and new cars and nicer houses, all that sort of thing. That's the cynic in me thinking out loud. But at the same time, let's say some of the money is used for tourism infrastructure. I hear that phrase all the time. I don't know what that is. I'm a tourist. What is the infrastructure that's helping me? I might go out into Port Dickson today and go do touristy things, but what is the infrastructure that I have access to? Are we talking about building a little tourism choo-choo train that delivers tourists from viewpoint to viewpoint, from tourist attraction to tourist attraction? Like, what is tourism infrastructure? I have no idea what any of this is. And I think when it comes to that stuff, I'm probably very much a free market kind of thinker, because in my mind, Bali is jammed with tourism infrastructure. And it all just grew up naturally because tourists flooded the island and they're looking for nice hotels with a nice swimming pool and a sauna, and local people built these hotels for them in exchange for payment to stay in this hotel. That's how that tourism structure was created. Bali is jammed with restaurants with menus in English, serving Western food, giving it an environment that's comfortable to Westerners. And none of this came from a government initiative. It just came from local people developing businesses that appeal to foreign tourists. And that's how that grew up. Scooter rental shops are everywhere because foreigners want to rent scooters. They want to rent surfboards. All these services that tourists want, local people created businesses to provide these things for payment. That's how it works. That's how tourism infrastructure grows. So what is the government going to do with all this money? What are they going to offer? I don't know what tourism infrastructure is. So those are my current affairs topics for this morning. As far as Planet Doug, the YouTube universe is concerned, I don't know if I have a lot to say about that. The big issue is the laptop issue. Who knows? I may end up editing video on a smartphone again if I can't do it on the laptop anymore. And that is a bad thing, but maybe it's a good thing as well, because on my smartphone, I would have to make much simpler videos. Recently, I've started making my videos a bit more complicated. I've been playing around with putting a coming up section at the front, and I've been shooting with multiple cameras, which means that I put multiple video tracks and audio tracks, and I switch from one to the other. And I can do all of that on my laptop, but I can't do that on a smartphone. On the smartphone, I can't have multiple audio tracks, multiple video tracks. All I can do is cut and paste one piece of video at a time. And you can't do fancy graphics and things like that. Not that I know how to do fancy graphics, but there are many, many things I can do on a laptop that I can't do on a smartphone. But maybe that's having that limitation might actually be a good thing, because, as I've talked about, even doing the little introduction to my videos takes a tremendous amount of time. That's what I was working on this morning, and that's when my computer crashed. I wasn't able to use it anymore, and that's going to take... I worked on the introduction to my latest video pretty much all day yesterday, just that, and I didn't manage to finish it. And I was going to finish it this morning, but before I could even get started, my laptop crapped out on me. So it's probably going to take me most of today to even finish that, and it's probably not worth the effort. But anyway, this video, I ended up with 2 versions again. Here in Port Dickson, I went out one day. I went to the local aquarium, and I went to a temple, and I went to a restaurant. And those 3 things together was a day in Port Dickson, and I shot video on that day. And I put it all together as a regular Planet Doug video, a very long one, lots of detail, telling the whole story from beginning to end. And then once I had all of that on my timeline, the video was done. I thought, let's see if I can make a more upbeat, happier, shorter, more fast-paced video without a lot of me talking. So that's what I set out to do, and I added the introduction, deleted a lot of sections of me talking about things, just put in montages with music over the top, and tried to make it much, much, much shorter. And that's what I'm working on right now. So for this video, I'll probably end up posting both of them. I'll post the short version first, because I think that's the better version for YouTube. It's not Planet Doug style, but And then later on, if I'm in the mood, I'll also post the extended cut. No one else does that on YouTube, but I'll do that. I'll do that for a little while, see how it feels, and then if the full extended cut just feels better to me, I'll just keep doing that in the future. But if the short, happy version is better, then I'll just do that instead, and I won't do the super cuts anymore. I enjoy making the super cuts. Those are the kinds of videos that I enjoy making, but they definitely are not YouTuber friendly, to put it mildly. Paddy Doyle is back in Thailand, and he just posted a video announcing his new video series. And the new series set in entirely in Thailand, I'm not sure, but I think mainly in Thailand. And the video is called I Came Back to Thailand. The Ultimate Travel Series begins now. And I have a lot of thoughts. I should preface my thoughts by saying again that the things that he does and the types of videos that he makes and his personality, none of that is meant for me. I'm not his target audience, and I understand that. I wouldn't normally watch his videos. I wouldn't watch them out of interest, because for me, they're not designed to interest someone like me or entertain someone like me. I look for something different. But I do watch his videos, and I'm only thinking of them from the point of view of a YouTuber. I make my own YouTube videos, so I like to watch videos from someone like him, and it's more like analyzing how he does it, what his thought pattern is, what the timing is, what the logistics are, things like that. So if I do say a lot of things that sound critical, I'm not really being critical. I think of it in my head as more of a discussion, an analysis of things. And again, I'm looking at it from the point of view of a YouTuber making videos. And this is kind of interesting because he talks about it a lot. Some logistics, for example, for this series, he wants it to be as much in real time as possible, because his most recent video packages were from Argentina, from Patagonia, and from the Antarctic. And those trips, he said, he went on those trips last year, back in November, he said. So it could have been October, November, but the videos aren't coming out until March. So there are months delay. And what he wants to do with the Thailand series is publish videos faster. Have an experience during Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, post the video Friday, so that it's much more in real time. So he's aware of this weirdness. I run into that all the time myself, where I want everything to be in real time, but it's really hard to do because of the time commitment required to make and upload a video. And no matter how hard you try, you fall behind. You just can't help it. And he talked about how he's learned that YouTube videos need to be packaged. They have to have an identity. You can't just wander around and make videos about you wandering and expect those to be noticed on YouTube. You have to give a label, a package. You have to put it in a box. I don't know if that's entirely true, to be honest, but that's what he says here. And that's how he came up with this idea that he has now for his new Thailand series. And he calls it, as I said, the Ultimate Travel Series. The Ultimate Travel Series. And he's using a lot of language that doesn't appeal to me again. It was funny, he kind of wrote himself into a corner because all his previous videos, his entire YouTube brand, is based on this idea of next level adventures. Other people, they have adventures. But here on Paddy Doyle, we have next level adventures. They're above other adventures. So he's already always talking about next level adventures. But here, he's saying that for Thailand, he really wants to crank it up. And he was talking about it, and he actually said, we're going to go on next level adventures. He realized he'd already used next level adventures, so he had to add another next. So these are next level adventures. So linguistically, he kind of wrote himself into a corner. And then he has to talk about Ultimate Travel Series. And he also talks about bucket list. So what he wants to do is go around Thailand and have these bucket list experiences. Bucket list, yeah. I don't like the phrase bucket list. It doesn't speak to me because when I hear bucket list, I associate it with the end of your life. And that makes sense because as far as I'm aware, the phrase was coined by a screenwriter back in 2007. It's a new expression, and the screenwriter, he wrote the script for that movie, The Bucket List, with like Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. And the idea is that these two elderly men in their 70s, 80s, they're very, very old, they're sick, they're in the hospital, they're dying, basically, and they get to know each other, and they realize that they're dying, their life is over, and yet they had all these things they wanted to do with their life that they haven't done. And the expression comes from this idea that you make a list of all the things you want to do before you kick the bucket. And of course, kick the bucket is an English expression meaning to die. So a list of all the things you want to do before you die. And luckily for the script and for the movie, one of them was extremely rich. I think Jack Nicholson's character was a billionaire or multi-hundreds of millionaire kind of guy. So when Morgan Freeman talked about how terrible it is that he's dying and he has this list of all these things he wanted to do before he kicks the bucket, then Jack Nicholson can say, well, let's go do them. And then the two of them basically can just blast around the world, spend as much money as they want, and do all of these bucket list things, all these next level adventures. So as soon as I hear bucket list, I think of somebody who's 80 years old and is doing something probably at the wrong time in their life. This is something they should have done 40 years ago, but they're doing it now because they never got around to doing it. So nitpicking, but for me, bucket list doesn't apply to someone Paddy Doyle's age. He's a young man in the prime of his life. He should not be going around trying to achieve a bucket list because it's like he's dying or something. He should just be living his life. The bucket list, that comes much, much later. And there is the way you approach these things, because ironically, the very first thing on his bucket list and the very first thing he did was go skydiving. And I think in the movie, The Bucket List, that might be the very first thing they did as well. It's certainly all over the trailer. I remember that. And I've seen the movie. I've watched it. It was a long time ago. But it's such a classic thing. Everybody has seen this 100 times, where there's a newspaper article about a grandmother. She's 95 years old and she's going skydiving for the first time in her life. It seems like every time somebody blows out their birthday cake and it has 80 plus candles on it, the very next day they get carted off to an airfield and they get strapped to some big guy behind them, and then they jump out of an airplane and go skydiving. That's what every 80, 90-year-old has to do these days, because it's part of their bucket list. And the thing is, all of these bucket list adventures are tourism adventures that don't require any investment or effort except for money. You basically hand over money. You pay for the experience. So in this case, if you want to go skydiving on your bucket list, all you do is withdraw $500 from your bank account, drive down to the local airfield, hand over your money, and then they hook you to a person who knows how to skydive, and then you go up in the plane with them and you kind of butt scoot across the plane towards the door, and then you jump out the door with this guy, and he's the one who knows how to skydive. He has the experience. He pulls the ripcord, he steers, he lands. He does everything, and you're just there for the ride. And that makes sense if you're 90 years old trying to finish a bucket list. But for me, I would much rather see someone like Paddy Doyle learn how to skydive. If you're going to skydive, then go skydiving. Take the course, learn how to do it, go on a whole bunch of practice jumps, and then eventually you build up to the point where you can solo skydive. And then you jump out of the plane yourself and you free fall and you learn how to do all that. Then you pull the ripcord and you steer and you land. And it takes a long time, and it takes effort and an investment of time and effort to develop the skills to go skydiving. That seems like something a young man should be doing, rather than just handing over a bunch of cash in order to jump out of a plane strapped to another person who actually knows how to do all the skydiving. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the whole bucket list idea. In thinking about that and watching a bunch of other YouTube videos, it seems like there's almost a YouTube arms race where everything has to be wild and crazy and over the top. There's like a search for the extreme in everything. And it creeps in all over the place. I watched a video the other day from a elderly Canadian couple. They're traveling around the world, and I think they're here in Malaysia right now, or they were recently. And they put together a video about places that they visited in Kuala Lumpur. And I noticed the title of the video was 10 Hidden Gems of Kuala Lumpur. So I was very interested in that. Ooh, what did they discover? What hidden gems are we talking about? But in the video, they basically just went to all the places that you go to when you are in Kuala Lumpur, things like the National Museum. But to me, those are just tourist attractions. They're not hidden gems. But for the YouTube algorithm, the YouTube thumbnail, description, title, there's this pressure to make everything sound better than it is. So rather than just 10 tourist attractions, it's 10 hidden gems of Kuala Lumpur. And you see that in how experiences are portrayed. And I don't know if Paddy Doyle was doing this or not, but when he went skydiving, he phrased everything in terms of how terrifying it was, how frightened he was, how scared he was, how his heart was racing the entire time, how it was crazy, scary, and terrifying. And I was listening to him the whole time. And again, I couldn't help but contrast it with me, how I would react to these things. I mean, in my life, I have gone skydiving. I did what I was talking about. I thought it might be an interesting hobby. This was back when I was quite a bit younger. So I did take a skydiving course. I signed up, joined a skydiving club when I was at university, and we had a long course and training periods. And then you go up into a plane, and your very first jump, if I remember right, I never jumped with an instructor. That wasn't part of the program. You did a lot of practice jumps from low levels where you're not in a plane, you're just jumping off a platform, of course, until you get the body movements figured out. But then you jump out of the plane, but your ripcord is tethered. So your first real jump, you don't pull the ripcord yourself, you jump out and then your parachute just opens automatically. But you're still doing it by yourself, and then you, of course, have to steer and land and do all that kinds of stuff. So it's an investment of time and effort. So I did do that, and I remember doing it, and I remember enjoying it, and I remember it was exciting, and I remember getting in the plane, and I remember it was a lot of fun. There were a lot of surprises, how small the plane was and how cramped you were in there. You have this idea that skydiving is this amazing feeling of freedom, the world, you're flying. And yet in reality, from the very beginning, when you put on your parachute and the harness, it has to be really tight. So that thing is like snugged down. You pull those straps hard and it's pulling up on your crotch, pulling down on your shoulders. And it's really constricting because you need it to be tight. And then you're like kind of waddling out to the plane, and then you're climbing into this plane with 10 other people, and it's very crowded, it's very small. It's not like you're in a jumbo jet. So you're in there and you're all hunched over and the door is only this high, and it just has this feeling of being tied up and trapped in an enclosed space. And then, of course, maneuvering yourself to the door is really difficult, and then you jump out, that's really difficult. And I remember being surprised at the noise level, because the door is open, of course, and the roar of the engine, the roar of the wind, you can't speak to anyone. So it's not this meditative, contemplative, serene experience that you might imagine of flying. If you were reading Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and that was part of your inspiration for wanting to go skydiving or something like that, well, it's not like that at all in real life. And when you jump out of the plane, things happen so fast. Maybe we're accustomed to watching movies and TV shows about people skydiving. And these people, of course, some of them might be free falling from vast heights. But when you're a beginner and you're just doing it casually, you're not going out into orbit before you jump. You're relatively close to the ground, and your parachute has to open very quickly, and your free fall lasts a very short time, and then the thing pops open, and it's a very confusing, you barely have time to think. And then you get a little bit of a serene mood as you're floating to the ground. But even then, you can still feel if something went wrong as you jumped out of the plane and one of these many straps kind of like dug into a part of your body that it wasn't supposed to dig into. It's sort of like, ow, 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 ow. You know, anyway, I remember all of these surprises, but I don't remember being scared. I wasn't terrified of going skydiving. I wanted to go skydiving. I was excited about it. I was interested in it. I'm walking out to the plane and I'm getting into the plane and we get up to altitude and I'm looking forward to the jump. I'm anticipating what it's going to be like. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not sitting there. I'm so scared. I'm so terrified. My heart is pounding. No, there was nothing like that. And not to be a super traditionalist, but I'm a guy. I'm not going to get in a roller coaster and scream and yell and close my eyes. I often feel weird about that sort of stuff because I see so many videos of how people react when they're on roller coasters or slingshots or whatnot, and they're screaming and yelling and covering their eyes. And I know if you had a video camera on me on a roller coaster, I would look like the most bored man on the planet. I always enjoy roller coasters, but when I'm on a roller coaster, I'm sitting there and I would look exactly the same as I look now. I would just be sitting there looking around. Oh yeah, I might crack a smile, but I'm not going to be shouting and yelling and screaming in fright. Again, I'm a guy. I don't do those things. I don't have those feelings. So when I'm listening to Paddy Doyle go on and on and on about how scared he was and how terrifying it was and how his heart was pounding and he's screaming and yelling, I can't really relate to any of that. And I wonder whether it's real to an extent. But I also wonder if he really did feel that way, that scared, that terrified with a pounding heart. As a guy, would you even want to admit it? I know that if I actually felt that way about anything, I wouldn't be that eager to tell anyone, because that's not an image that a guy wants to walk around with, right? You want to be cool under fire and brave and courageous. So anyway, so I was watching his whole skydiving experience, and those were, some of my thoughts. I've also been watching all of the videos on the travel channel, the Detour Duo. I mentioned this channel in my last BTS video. It's made by this American couple, Tony and Sarah. And about 4 months ago, they posted a video where they quit their jobs, sold all their possessions, packed a backpack, and then they flew to Bangkok, and now they're going to travel around the world. And they spent 2 months in Thailand, and then they flew to Kuala Lumpur. And in that time, I guess it's been about 3 months total, and they've posted about 12 videos. So about one video per week. So they spent a week in Bangkok, then they took a train from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, and then they rented 2 scooters, one for each of them, and then they rode around the Mae Hong Son Loop, and they went to Chiang Rai, and then after that they flew to KL. And I watched all of the videos so far. And most of my thoughts are about the editing process, because I don't know whether it's Tony or Sarah, I don't know who does most of the editing, but they're highly skilled at what they do in terms of graphics, and they put a lot of work into the graphics and into the structure of the video. So they have a coming up in the video introduction with a lot of fancy graphics, a lot of voiceover, a lot of music, a lot of transitions, and then that slides into the main video itself, and the main video continues with a lot of voiceover, going back into real video, then voiceover, then transitions and graphics. A lot of work, and they managed to string their videos together, so the next video starts with a reference to their previous video, and then it ends with a reference to upcoming videos. The whole thing is highly professional, highly organized, and very well done. So that's kind of how I was looking at their videos. I even made a list. I took all of their videos and I numbered them, and then I watched the intro to each video, because I wanted to see how they did their intros. And it was interesting that there was a pattern there, that there's only so many different ways you can do the intro. So referring to my list here, you get this type of opening where it says where they are, like announcing the setting. We're in Thailand. No, this one was like, we're in Thailand's largest and busiest city. Then dramatic pause, and then a big word, Bangkok, appears over all kinds of maps and graphics and sped up video, all kinds of fancy stuff. We're going to explore this. We're going to learn about this. We're going to do this. So you announce where you are, you say what you're going to be doing, and then you wind up with, join us as we take you on a tour of Bangkok's this and this. So there you get the structure. And the other pattern you get all the time is a beginning of a journey. So the introduction will say something like, for the next 14 hours, we're sleeping in an overnight train from Bangkok to Chiang Mai. Over the course of our travel, there will be A, there will be B, C, D. We'll be sharing. So again, there's that structure where, so for example, for my video where I took the ferry from Sumatra to Malaysia, I could copy and paste this structure, and I could say, for my opening to my video, the journey took, say, 14 hours, and I could say, for the next 14 hours, I'll be riding on a fast ferry going from Sumatra to Malaysia. And then you always have a list. You have your opening, then a list. So over the course of my boat ride, over the course of my journey, I will be riding in a becak on a boat, doing this, having this. So once you have the setting, the list of experiences, and then you say what you're going to be doing. We'll be sharing everything with you, or join me as we cross on this ferry. So you kind of get that structure. You have the setting, place or time. Then you have a list of a whole bunch of things you're going to see or do. And then you have the invitation to come with me, join me, let's go. There's that. And then you see that pattern over and over and over, but using different words and different phrases. That was kind of interesting to see. The other approach you can take is a more personal one. And they did one introduction where they introduced themselves. So the video opens with a video of them, and he says, I'm Tony, and this is Sarah, and we're backpacking through Thailand. Then they say, we're in Chiang Mai, establishing the place. Then you get the list. We're going to do this and this and this and this, and then join us, right? So there's that pattern again. Now, the next video they did was going around the Mae Hong Son Loop by scooter. And again, they set the time and the place. So they did like drums, ba 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 ba, map of Thailand, then big graphic, Thailand by Motorbike. And then he starts speaking. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to show you what it's like to ride the Mae Hong Son Loop. And in this video, and then they do the list, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this. Welcome to our adventures on the Mae Hong Son Loop. So there you get another one, time and place. Over the next 3 weeks, or during the past 3 weeks, over the next 14 hours, we're in Thailand and I'm going to show you. Then you give the list and then you join the viewer to come along with you. Another one, same pattern, but different words. He said, so guess what? We're still backpacking through the mountainous province of Chiang Mai. We're going to start here and we're going to, and then they make the list, and then let's recap how we got here first. And then they review the previous videos to show how they got there. So yeah, I just found that interesting to look at all their videos break down the structure and see the pattern. And then if you want to do the same thing for your video, you can copy their example, and you're not really copying them because everybody does the same thing. There's only so many different ways that you can do, one of these travel videos. I just said, It's also really interesting how much they manage to jam into one video. And part of it is because they set out to do it that way, of course. So in his mind, I think Tony already knows what the video is going to be like. He has the introduction, he knows what shots he needs for that, and then he knows how he's going to put the video together, so when they're in each situation filming, they don't do an excessive amount of filming. They only take the minimum amount that he needs for the video. So the very first one, it was just amazing because they rode the scooter from Chiang Mai to Pai, and then they spent a week in Pai, and all of that is in one 15-minute video. So it opens with renting the scooter, driving the scooter, stopping for lunch, stopping at a tourist attraction, stopping for another meal, riding all the way to Pai, arriving at their hotel, and giving a tour of their room. And they did all of that in 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes for all of that. And then the next 10 minutes, they show their entire week in Pai. They did a tour of Pai's walking street. They went to the Big Buddha. They went to the Memorial Bridge. They went to Pai Canyon. They changed to a new hotel. They went to the Nam Lod Cave. They went to the Ban Jabo viewpoint. They went to the Bamboo Bridge, and they had a meal. All of those things in 10 minutes. So it's like 1 minute per attraction. And of course, you can contrast that with me, because when I went to just one of those things, like I went to all those places that they went to, but when I went to the Nam Lod Cave, I went to the cave, shot an entire video, and then as I edited that video, I wasn't really happy with the experience, and I went back to the cave later and reshot the entire experience with a different camera. They did the whole cave in 1 minute. Same thing with Pai Canyon. I shot an 1.5-hour video about the Pai Canyon, the Memorial Bridge, the Bamboo Bridge. I went to Ban Jabo viewpoint. I did all of the things they did, but I devoted an hour or more to each thing, and they did each thing in 1 minute, which is, again, for me, similar to the Paddy Doyle video, that I'm not their target audience. I wouldn't normally watch their videos because they don't interest me, but I'm watching them just from the point of view of a YouTuber, how they structure their videos. I do find that interesting because, as I talked about in my previous behind the scenes video, you can watch their entire video and the country they're in is largely irrelevant. It hardly even seems to come up. So when you get to the end of their experiences, then they flew from Thailand to Malaysia. When you're watching their videos, you probably wouldn't even notice that they were in a new country, because all it is a series of 1 minute clips about a meal here, this here, this here, this here. It has nothing to do with the country that they're in, if you see what I mean. So it's an entirely different approach. And something else that they've done, probably not in all of their videos, but I noticed it in a couple, is they put bloopers at the end. And I find the bloopers in YouTube videos to be distracting, because it makes me think about what they did. And the bloopers, the only way you can have a blooper is if you made a mistake. And that tells me that the experience was scripted. So for example, they went to the Big Buddha, and then Tony, he's walking down the steps and he's filming himself with the Big Buddha behind him. And then he says, "We just went up to the giant Buddha And then Sarah corrects him. It's not giant Buddha. He says, oh, okay. We're coming down from the huge Buddha. It's like, no, it's not huge Buddha. And he had to do it over and over again because he couldn't remember to say big Buddha, which is what everybody calls it. And I think the final take that ended up in the video, he didn't even say big Buddha. I think he just said, we're coming down the steps from the Buddha. Like, he didn't even say any of them, but he had to do it over and over and over again until he got it right. And it made me think back to, oh, that's kind of weird, because it tells me they weren't filming their experience of going to the big Buddha as a real experience. They were performing a script that they either wrote down already or a script that they had in their head. And you saw that over and over where, again, Tony was coming down from the big Buddha, and he was speaking honestly, I think, and he said something about, we're coming down from the Buddha, and there really wasn't much to see up there, which I think was his honest opinion. But then Sarah stopped him and said, what do you mean? The view? And he's like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't say there was nothing. So now they have to do take two. And now he goes down the steps. We just came down from the Buddha, and the view from up there was amazing. Because that's what you need to do for a YouTube video. So he had to correct himself to say something is wonderful, which again makes me think that what they're doing in their videos isn't really honest, because they're kind of following a script. So I don't really like seeing bloopers. I know that they're doing a script, these two, because their videos are much more controlled. They're very organized, so you know that it's not a genuine documentation of their experience. It's a video that they're putting together to be entertaining. So they're not necessarily telling the truth, not the strict truth anyway. And one interesting thing about their trip, though, when they went around the Mae Hong Son Loop, he had camera troubles. He had a really nice drone, a new expensive one, and I guess he crashed it. It was following them on the scooter, and it ran into some trees, and then it crashed, and I guess it didn't work anymore, which is one of the reasons they flew to Kuala Lumpur, because they knew they could get it repaired here. They couldn't do that easily in Chiang Mai, I guess. So they flew to KL, and here they're going to get there in KL, they're going to get their drone repaired. And he lost his 360 camera, which I think must have been a big blow for him, because he used it all the time. He used 360 video a lot, and they went to this fish cave, and they don't show exactly what happened, but there's this video clip where he's looking down at a bunch of water filled with fish, and you feed the fish. You know, it's the fish cave, and then there's a bloop, something hit the water, splashes, and disappears. And he says in voiceover, it's like, that was my 360 camera. Somehow he dropped it, or it slipped out of his pocket. I don't know what happened, but he lost his 360 camera, and it fell into the fish pond. And I guess he couldn't get it back. Which, I do wonder about that. He talks about it at length, and he does say on video to anyone out there, if you can go into this fish pond in the cave, there's a camera waiting for you. It's waterproof, it might still be in good condition, and then you can go in there and get it. But it made me wonder why he didn't. And it's not entirely clear, but it might be that the cave was just way too narrow, and in order for him to go into the water would be not really possible to do. I'm not really sure. But it did make me think that maybe he just wasn't brave enough to go into the water, because that's something else I noticed, similar to Paddy Doyle. Tony, he's a big guy, and he's a big traveler having this big adventure. But in the videos, he seems surprisingly timid, when it comes to something like riding the scooter, he seemed really scared of riding the scooter. And after a very short time, he's in a lot of pain. Just like, oh, this hurts, this hurts. And then they can only ride the scooter for 1 hour at a time before they have to take a break. And then when they go down some non-paved roads, he makes a big deal about how dangerous it is and how he has to be so careful. This is so dangerous. And I was looking at the road going, I don't know. It just looks like a dirt road. You're not on pavement anymore, but there's nothing wrong with that road you're on. I don't know why he was making such a big deal out of it. And then they went into a national park, and there was a kind of a suspension bridge. And Sarah stayed behind so that Tony could go up to the bridge, walk across it, and she could film him walking across the bridge. But Tony had his own camera too, and he was filming himself, and he went on and on and on about how scared he was, how he didn't dare go out on this bridge, and I'm so scared. I guess he's scared of heights, so I guess some people are just scared of heights. But again, I had this feeling of, again, me in that situation, walking across a bridge, like, I don't know, I'm a guy. I'm not going to be scared of walking across the bridge and riding a scooter down this bumpy dirt road. I don't know, just ride your scooter. None of these things seemed like that big a deal. And I have a feeling that if I dropped my 360 camera into a fish pond, I'm going in after it. It's a valuable piece of equipment for me, and I'm going to try to get it back. Yeah, but who knows? Maybe that cave, even I couldn't go into it because it did look kind of narrow. I don't know, maybe it was way too dangerous. I don't know. I'd have to see it for myself. But my instinct is that I'd at least give it a try, see if I could get in there and get the camera back, because yeah, it's pretty valuable. I'd want to at least give it a college try, you know. One more YouTube story, and this one is about Bald and Bankrupt, though it's not a new video. This is about him deleting a video, which I find kind of interesting. The last video I saw from Bald and Bankrupt, he was in Athens in Greece, and the title of the video was something about "We caught a pickpocket in Athens," or "I caught a pickpocket," or something like that. And I watched the video, and I talked about it in my previous behind-the-scenes video. And the main thing that jumped out at me that I wanted to talk about was how he had a cameraman. And it was the first time I'd seen him use a cameraman. So instead of him or his sidekick, Timmy Carter, using their Sony X3000 cameras, they had a bigger camera, and they had a guy going with them. And this other guy, who wasn't really part of the video. He showed up a little bit, but he wasn't supposed to be part of the video. He was just there to hold the camera and follow them around. And I found it interesting to see that technique and to see how it affected the way the video was shot. And I think it affected how they behaved, how they spoke, and the things they did. Most of that in a negative way. It seemed to make the video worse. That was my conclusion. But then, I don't know how I stumbled across this fact, but I learned that Bald deleted the video. It was gone. It wasn't on his channel anymore. And that led me down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what had happened, what was going on. And it turns out that that video got so much negative feedback in the comments. People were really saying negative things about the video, and I guess it got to the point, it was so bad that Bald decided to just delete the whole video. And now I'm really sad that I missed all that drama, because one of my driving forces for talking about these videos so much is that I find it so interesting that when I watch one of his videos, I see nothing but negative things. And yet there will be 5,000 comments praising the video and talking about it like it's the most amazing thing they have ever seen. And I always end up wondering, what am I missing? How can I see nothing but negatives, and yet the rest of the world is raving about it, how it's like the best thing they've ever seen in their life? And I'm wondering, am I insane? What is going on here? And then here we have a Bald and Bankrupt video where the feedback from viewers was so awful that he actually deleted the video, and I missed it. I could have had this opportunity to read all these negative comments, and I'll never get to see them because the video is gone already, which is too bad. And a funny thing is that I did see some discussion about this, because if you start doing searches, you can actually find the video on YouTube where people downloaded it or made copies of it. And now, even though Bald removed it from his channel, other people have uploaded it to their channel or uploaded pieces of it. And there are discussions online. You can go to Reddit, and then people on Reddit are talking about Bald and Bankrupt and this video and the reaction to it and how he deleted it and how Bald got in arguments with people about the video. And I missed all of that, but I could get a sense of what people were saying in the Reddit forum, in the discussions going on there. And it was kind of funny because all the things that people were complaining about or criticizing the video about, to me, they were all just normal Bald and Bankrupt things. So in my last BTS video, when I was talking about the video, I didn't even talk about any of those things, because to me, those were all just normal. Every one of his videos follows the same pattern. I only talked about it from the point of view of the filming technique, having a cameraman. But I mean, if I had critiqued the video, I would have talked about all kinds of things where Timmy Carter was acting as a tour guide for Bald and Bankrupt, because it's his home. He's from Greece, and he was taking Bald around and trying to show him the city, all the sights, the history of the place, and Bald just ridiculed him the entire time about how this is stupid and that's stupid and I don't want to go there and I don't want to walk 5 minutes to go look at a bunch of stupid rocks. He just basically made fun of Timmy and made fun of Athens and made fun of everything. He ridiculed everything all the time. And from my point of view, he was being really rude to Timmy Carter. I saw that. I was watching the video, but to me, that's how he always behaves. So I didn't even think it was worth talking about. That's just normal Bald and Bankrupt. And I guess he was doing all these things on the street where he was interacting with people, with women in particular. Anytime there was a woman anywhere near him, he was doing this banter with them, sort of flirting with them, but in a kind of, I wouldn't call it crude way, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. He was joking and laughing around. There was one thing in particular a lot of people seemed to focus on, where there was a woman pushing a baby stroller, and there was like a toddler in the stroller. And then Bald and Bankrupt fell beside this woman, walked with her, and was joking with her about how this kid needs a stepdad. And he's talking to the kid and saying things like, hey, I could be your stepdad. You want me to get together with your mom? I can be your new daddy. And he was talking throughout the whole video about Riz. I guess Riz is style and clothing. And for the whole video, he dressed up in a shirt and tie. And I guess the idea was he was trying to look good. He had Riz, and he was going to use his Riz to pick up women in Greece. He went on and on and on and on about Riz. And a lot of people had trouble with him using the word Riz and then talking to all these women. And then they went to a bar, and I don't know what kind of a bar. Maybe the women there were actually paid escorts, I'm not sure. But he was in there with Timmy, and they're trying out their Riz and trying to chat up all these women and get together with these women. And I'm watching all of that in the video, And it never occurred to me to even talk about it because that's what he always does. That's what's in all of his videos. But somehow, in this video, the Athens one, people reacted really badly to it, and then he got in a lot of trouble because of it, and the response was so bad that he actually deleted the whole video, and it's gone from his channel anyway. So, yeah, kind of a funny experience, but I'm just so sad that I never got to dive into the comments and read all of them. That would have been a lot of fun for me, but I missed out. I didn't know there was all this backlash against the video. One random thought that occurs to me is that I've noticed a pattern on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure it is something that people do deliberately. I don't know that 100%, but I'm pretty sure it is. And it is a trick that YouTubers use to drive engagement. And it's connected to this idea that there's no such thing as bad publicity. You hear that all the time in the marketing world, that even if your company does something stupid or bad and gets all this bad publicity, it doesn't matter because all that publicity, all that bad publicity is still publicity. And it means people are talking about your company, and that probably means they're buying your product and you're making money. So there's no such thing as bad publicity. And I think a lot of companies do things that they know are dumb, and they do it because they know it's dumb and funny, and all the talk shows, Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and all the Jimmys, they're all going to make jokes about it at night, and it gives their company a lot of publicity. So recently I saw an advertisement that everybody was talking about, that Kentucky Fried Chicken made their own pizza, but they made the pizza out of chicken. So it's basically pieces of fried chicken with a layer of cheese and toppings on top. And I guess they call it a cheesa. Cheesa? Some really dumb name. And obviously it feeds into this whole idea of fast food being really terrible and the American diet being really unhealthy, that fried chicken is bad enough, but now they actually turned fried chicken into a pizza. And they're selling this at Kentucky Fried Chicken apparently. But I'm pretty sure Kentucky Fried Chicken made this thing knowing it's ridiculous, knowing it's dumb, and counting on the fact that all the media outlets are going to make fun of it and ridicule it and make jokes about it, but at least they're getting all this free advertising because Jimmy Kimmel talked about it, Colbert talked about it, Jimmy Fallon talked about it. They all made jokes about this thing. Everybody's talking about Kentucky Fried Chicken's pizza, their chicken pizza. So you can extend that idea to YouTube, where in the YouTube currency is engagement. If YouTube sees a lot of engagement in your video, that's good. Then YouTube will now promote your channel and promote your videos. So if people are leaving a lot of negative comments, criticizing you and correcting things and saying bad things, well, that's still engagement, and it counts in your favor. So one thing I've noticed is that a lot of YouTubers will deliberately, I think, deliberately say something wrong. They'll make a mistake, hoping that people will correct them in the comments. And that is a basic instinct of human beings. We have this drive to correct people, and a YouTuber knows we can't resist. So for example, the recent one that I saw was a YouTube video, I think it was a short, where somebody was building a cube out of staples. You know how staples come in a line? And if you take all these lines of staples and put them together like a puzzle, you can actually build this cube. Watching the video is almost like an ASMR experience. And this guy was commenting on the video and talking about it, and he kept saying how it's even in the title of the video, building a cube out of paper clips. And he says, this guy is amazing. He makes this beautiful cube out of paper clips. Look at how he puts together the paper clips. And of course, there's like 10,000 comments of people saying, oh, you idiot, those aren't paper clips, those are staples. Oh, I think you meant staples. Here, I corrected it for you. Those are staples, not paper clips. And the guy, I'm pretty sure he did it on purpose because he knew everybody would correct him. And that drives his channel. He gets a lot of engagement because of that. So you could do it in your video if you're talking about something and you say, Yoda used the power of the Force in Star Trek. Or you say something about how Han Solo said, beam me up, Scotty. Like, you mix up Star Trek and Star Wars. I mean, that will drive the nerds crazy. And if you do something like that and you accidentally put Yoda in the Star Trek universe, or put Captain Kirk in Star Wars, or Spock in Star Wars, hundreds, thousands of people will pile into the comments to make fun of you and correct you. But of course, that's all engagement. And I think YouTubers do that all the time because the mistakes are so obvious, and after 1,000 corrections, they don't go back to correct it. The guy could go back to his video title and change the title from paper clips to staples. He knows he made a mistake, but he doesn't correct it because I think he did it on purpose. So yeah, I think that's a trick that you see in YouTube. I notice it more and more these days. And so I think that is it. It's time to get some lunch. I'm going to let my computer sit for another hour while I have lunch, and then when I come back, my LCD screen will have recovered and I'll be able to edit video for a couple of hours at least before I lose it again. Hopefully, we'll see. So that's it, winding down, shutting down, and I'll see you in the next video.